Oh, it's finally time to talk about this godforsaken role after all of the other ones that were so much better than it. Yeah, that's right, I'm going to be talking about you mud-munching ADC mains, and don't think I've forgotten about you hard-stuck gold goblin mage players who should just go back to mid lane or support where it takes actual skill to play a mage. And as you know, I'm here to funnel knowledge about how easy and ridiculous this role is directly into your brain, like how big corporations funnel millions of dollars into political candidates so that nothing ever changes and everyone suffers. Welcome to a terrible guide to League of Legends.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
ADC is the strongest role in the game according to literally everyone besides ADC mains themselves, who believe it's so far behind every other role despite the fact that the champions in this role are so good that they can dominate other roles with no problem. Take a shot every time I say role and you'll end up in the hospital. And look, I'm not gonna sit here and say that ADC doesn't have its own host of problems, but to say that it's the weakest role in the game is just as disingenuous as that one time I tricked my friend into thinking that hot sauce makes your wiener grow. And I'm going to be playing both sides during this video because after playing way too many games of ADC to get this footage, twitch.tv/Atarians by the way, I can see both sides of the argument for why ADC feels so pivotal when you're playing other roles, but why it feels so downright terrible when you're playing it yourself. This role makes the coin flip of solo queue feel even worse than it already does, because now you're not only coin flipping whether or not your team has hands, but you're also coin flipping whether or not your team has a brain. Let me explain. Due to the duo nature of the role, you're dealing with less XP than every other role besides maybe jungle, because Riot has old yellow jungle XP enough that you should probably be concerned for Nasus and Naafiri. And unlike the support, you actually need to stay in lane to get gold by farming minions, and with how prevalent dragons have always been and will always be, there's not much of a reason for you as an ADC to leave bot lane unless you're an ADC like Twitch or Tristana that can get a cheeky mid gank off. Which means that as your average ADC, you'll more than likely be the lowest of the levels in the game, probably only slightly above your support, while playing one of the squishiest classes of characters in the game, and you're playing a role with damn near zero map impact. Which makes it feel like if your support and jungler aren't at least playing with their monitors on, then you're just gonna get wrecked by every enemy assassin, bruiser, juggernaut, mage, and whatever else there is in the game, because this role can and does get one shot by everyone. But on the other hand, this role is so fucking piss poor easy mode that I don't even know where to begin. Because you have so little map pressure, you don't have to plan out everything around the map and just focus on laning. So you can basically play like the two other lanes don't exist. Due to the champions you play being able to output insane amounts of consistently high damage due to building AD crit and attack speed, you're basically the role equivalent of be careful who you call ugly on ARAM, because you're a role that can't be ignored when you have an even footing with most of the roster. Which is why this role gets focused down in teamfights so hard, and you basically need to beg your support to never leave your side. Speaking about them, let's talk about the absolutely lovely dumbass that you're forced to lane with. As much as I hate to admit it, because of the dependent nature of ADC as a role, you kinda need to rely on your support a lot during the laning phase. They're the person who does a lot of the decision making, and I'm certain most ADC players have used the phrase that support decides the lane at some point. This leads to a very child-parent type of a relationship with you and your support, because if they don't raise you right, then you're pretty much going to be a giant asshole or completely useless and everyone else has to deal with it. But if they do help you become a well-adjusted adult, then you're pretty much going to succeed and help others succeed along with you. The power this role has and doesn't have at the same time, and how you just kind of have to hope and pray to RNGesus that you get a team that isn't comprised of 4 people in hospice care, is insane. Because I've had games where I'm literally the only person that can do anything, and yet we refuse to play for me and we lose, and I've had games where I literally didn't even participate in the first 10 kills and we just win. And I think the dependent nature of the role is even better highlighted by the fact that the champions that are played there for the most part can be taken into other roles and are oftentimes incredibly better and more oppressive in those roles. So saying the champs are weak is just such a terrible argument that you should laugh at anyone who says they are. The role simply has the least amount of roam potential, will be splitting XP the majority of the game, is closer to priority objectives, and is a 2v2 lane, so ganks from other lanes come there more often. But to compensate for all of these bad parts, the role has incredibly overpowered champions. And I know someone is going to be in the comments like,
What? Marksmen are an overpowered class of champions? They suck! suck! The enemy Zed can hit every single ability and I die, so therefore my champ sucks forever and always.
And all I need to say to that is, name me another class of champions that can be played and are somewhat meta or viable in every single role. You can't. And because I'm already discussing it so much, let's go over the most common champions that you'll be seeing in the role. Generally speaking, you'll be seeing one of two types of champions. Either marksmen, which are known more as traditional bot laners, or mages if you like eating dirt in your sandwich. Marksmen are your standard easy baby Hello Kitty Island Adventure mode champions that require you to stand there right-clicking the enemy because with the amount of AD, attack speed, and crit most of them buy, you're pretty much going to be the highest damage threat on either team, and unlike mages or assassins, you can't miss auto attacks and you don't have to worry about your main damage source being on cooldown. Mages are on the opposite end of the spectrum for people who want to have a champion that's a bit harder to pilot in most cases but make laning phase into said Hello Kitty Island Adventure by playing a champion that can either punish marksmen for simply existing like they're a tick that you just found on your pet, or by completely neutralizing the lane phase because you're playing something like Ziggs that can stand 50 yards back from the wave and still get all of the CS. And I'll say that you feel a little less team reliant when you're playing a mage, but the problems of being the person in a duo lane that doesn't roam and is near important objectives is still very apparent regardless of what you play. But as a mage, you do get that ability to completely dick over a lot of the ADC players because due to having zero macro responsibilities, most ADC players have the brain the size of my left nut and still haven't figured out how to deal with mages in bot lane, leading to a lot of mages dominating the space. And now that you know all of this, I can finally start addressing the Cho'Gath in the room. As you've probably concluded based on everything I've already said, ADC is a role that is incredibly team reliant, possibly more than any of the other roles in the game due to how little map impact it brings compared to the other four roles. And with how map impacts can undeniably alter the state of the game, not having any makes the role feel a lot weaker than the other ones. Combine that with the fact that most champs who go down there are weak in early game and are prone to being one-shot as a part of the class of champions they're a part of, and the fact that you'll often be down levels due to having to split XP with your support, and the role feels weaker still because you're often going to be less tanky and do less damage than the solo laners and jungler who are going to be coming down to gank you for the millionth fucking time. Combine all of that with the fact that due to there being more potential lead generations off of a good gank or counter gank in bot lane due to having more people and being closer to dragon, you're going to oftentimes be fighting more in this lane and more from other people deciding to fight rather than you, leading to this role feeling even weaker and less prevalent. And while none of this means that ADC as a role or marksmen are actually weak, consider the fact that most games have at least 2 marksmen, it does lead to this perception in the ADC player base's eyes that the role simply can't compete with the others. This in turn often will lead Riot to over-buffing or over-changing ADC champions and itemization until it's the new meta, and then realize why it wasn't a good idea to do that when those champions start appearing in other roles and dominating there because they're not limited in mid and top the same way they are in ADC. All of this is to say that while yes, ADC does appear to be weak, it only appears to be weak in a macro sense. Most ADCs have the ability to completely redefine how a teamfight goes, whether that's through epic outplays, resets, generally doing more damage at a more consistent rate than other classes, or doing more damage than everyone else in the game with a massive AoE ability that can not only crit but also heals her for lifesteal and it's instant I win, fuck you, but god I hate Samira! And this is why ADCs are so heavily focused in teamfights, because their ability to output a high amount of damage at a much more consistent rate than other damage dealing classes, and being able to sometimes do it from extreme ranges is a massive boon that few other champions get. So focusing an ADC in a teamfight or protecting your ADC is oftentimes crucial to whether or not you win a game, because as long as you're itemizing well and aren't so far behind that it would affect any role from being useful, not just you, then you are a threat as ADC and the enemy has to respect that. Also, don't let any ADC mains tell you about how good the role is, because if you give them a tier list, they're going to make some of the worst takes you've ever seen in the history of terrible takes from League of Legends players. If you enjoyed this video, then why not go check out the other A Terrible Guide to League of Legends videos and subscribe to the channel while you're at it, because I need to eat.